Shiloh battlefield, the Civil War. Probably the first bloodiest battle of the Civil War. These are the armies that fought at the Battle of Shiloh. Army of Tennessee led by U.S. Grant. This the Union Army, Army of the Ohio, commanded by Don Carlos Buell. And the Army of Mississippi, the Confederate Army, commanded by Albert Sidney Johnston, the highest ranking officer killed in the Civil War. Headquarters of U.S. Grant, Commander-in-General of the Union Army. Cemetery was established after the Civil War. It's where most of the battle did. Probably mostly Union, some Confederate are buried here. Just a little history of what I know about the battle. See a lot of tree trimming down here, doing that today. See in the distance the Tennessee River, Pittsburgh Landing, and that's another name for the battle of Pittsburgh Landing and the Battle of Shiloh. Union had a way of naming the battles after bodies of water. The Confederates usually named it after the nearest town or settlement, so sometimes you'll see two names for a battle in the Civil War. A Battle of Shiloh, Battle of Pittsburgh Landing, Battle of Bull Run, Battle of Manassas, Battle of Sharpsburg, Battle of Antietam. So some of the history I do know about the battle. Earlier in the war, the Union Army had defeated the Confederate Army at Nashville and Fort Donelson. They have some really bad Confederate generals. Some of them were a little cowardly, like General Pillow. And after that, the Union Army under Grant started marching. The ultimate goal was to take control of the Mississippi River. That was to divide the Confederacy and economic lifeline as well, because most goods were transported by water back then. So they were marching this way toward the Mississippi, which they would end up eventually at Vicksburg. But General Albert Johnston, the Confederate general, was tasked of intercepting the Union Army. And of course, with a lot of battles in the Civil War, they sort of surprised each other by meeting here at Shiloh. The Union Army thought the Confederate Army was further away, and Confederates surprised them on April 5th, 1862. And this is one of the, probably the first big bloodiest battle. Maybe Bull Run was a bigger battle, but it was a big bloody battle. 24,000 casualties total for both sides. It was a rough first day. The Confederate really won the first day of the battle, and they could have possibly won if they had pressed on and pushed the Union Army back all the way back to Pittsburgh Landing crossing here at the river, in the swampy areas around this battlefield. But it was really exhausting. Just think, that night after the first day of the battle, a thunderstorm came through, and most of the soldiers had no covering. They were just laying out in the rain. The wounded, the dead, and the living, especially on the Union side, they slept out or laid out. And how much sleep they got during the thunderstorm. They laid out there in the wet and cold. That was the first day of the battle, and Union Army just basically got whipped by the Confederates. But U.S. Grant, as he's known later, he didn't worry about numbers, so to speak. He knew the numbers were on his side, so he just when he got command of the Union Army in Virginia, he just kept pressing. No matter how many men were killed, he kept pressing. So walking toward the bluff here at Pittsburgh Landing. Monument, state of Iowa, See, there's some other monuments from Indiana. And all these 3 monuments from Indiana. It's very impressive. One thing I like about this battlefield, and also probably Antietam is my favorite battlefield. I've been to most every Civil War, major Civil War battlefield. And this is a lot of wood, you know, it's a wooded area, but it's a nice battlefield. And one thing I like, this is not cluttered with a lot of monuments. I know Gettysburg is the pivotal battle in the Civil War, but you go there and it's always crowded, and there's monuments to everything. Everybody and his brother put up a monument on that battlefield. General William Wallace's headquarters, monument to that. I think, unfortunately, he died in the battle. He was killed. Yep. "5 p.m. he was mortally wounded." Shiloh Church, Log Church, Shiloh Log Church. It's a Methodist church. This is a replica. It's not the original church, obviously. The original church was destroyed during the battle. You see a lot of limbs down after the ice storm, right? Be the one cleaning it up. Very simple. Hallelujah. Part of the Battle of Shiloh was actually a naval engagement of sorts. Union gunboats bombarded the Confederate camps on the April 6th. You see the names of the gunboats, Tyler and Lexington. They were on the opposite side of the Tennessee River. Still a lot of people out fishing today. Hear the woodpecker pecking in the distance. Nice on a day like today. This is the area where the highest ranking officer on either side died in battle. General Albert Sidney Johnston. Unlike a lot of generals who stay in the rear, General Johnston rode to the front to rally, encourage his troops. Unfortunately for him, he was hit in the back of his leg, around his knee, and it hit an artery. And he rode for a while without realizing he had been wounded. A little later on, he started slumping from his horse. He fell on the ground, or carried to the ground, where he died. Possibly he could have been saved if he had had a doctor that had put a tourniquet on it, but the doctor, his own doctor, was away tending the wounded then. Some say tending some wounded Union soldiers. It was a real blow to the Confederacy. Probably, other than Robert Lee, Jefferson Davis's favorite general. After he fell, General Pierre Beauregard took over command. And unlike Johnston, he stayed in the rear giving out orders. Not really sure what Johnston's battle plan was. On the first day of the battle, some historians say if Beauregard had pressed on and swept the Union army back to the swamps in the river, the Confederates might have won. Both sides were exhausted. That first day's battle was tough. And by the time it was getting dark, and they thought, well, we can push them back to the river tomorrow. Not knowing that General Buell's reinforcements were arriving during the night, and then would push back the Confederacy, who then retreated back to Corinth, Mississippi. Maybe if Beauregard did press on, they would have won. But I have my doubts. Grant was not one to give up easy, and he knew reinforcements were on the way.